Welcome back, beautiful souls, to Breaking It Down with David. Today's conversation is one of those that bridge worlds, a dialogue between two systems that shape human consciousness across thousands of years. The Hermetic Principles of ancient Kemet or Egypt and the Ten Commandments of the Hebrew tradition. These two systems, two languages, yet both pointing towards the same universal order. The same cosmic intelligence that governs not only the stars above, but the moral compass within. Now, this isn't going to be a religious talk, it's a study in consciousness. We're going to look at where these teachings came from, how they overlap, and most importantly, how they both describe the laws that govern how we live, think, and evolve. By the end of this session, you will see that both systems, the Hermetic and the Biblical, are really talking about the same thing: the science of becoming divine while still human. Let's go back, way back, before Moses, before Mount Sinai, before the tablets. We arrive in the land of Kemet, what we now call Egypt. Egypt wasn't just a civilization of pyramids and tombs. It was a civilization obsessed with consciousness, obsessed with order, or Ma'at. Ma'at wasn't just truth or justice. It was the principle of universal balance, the same energy that keeps the stars in orbit and the heart aligned with truth. Now, the Hermetic teachings, attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, or thought in Egyptian mythology, formed a kind of sacred science. It taught that all of creation follows seven universal principles: mental, vibrational, rhythmic, and so on. Thousands of years later, out of the same Nile Valley culture came the Hebrews, a people whose contact with Egyptian spirituality shaped their early understanding of God and law. When Moses ascended Mount Sinai, he didn't just receive arbitrary rules. He received what, in essence, mirrored the laws of universal balance, moral reflections of what the Hermeticists described as cosmic law. So when we see the Ten Commandments, we are not seeing something separate from the Hermetic worldview. We are seeing its moral expression, its human translation. Let's briefly summarize them. The first is the principle of mentalism. The all is mind. The universe is mental. Everything begins with consciousness. The second is the principle of correspondence. As above, so below. As within, so without. Reality mirrors the unseen. Our inner world shapes the outer. The third, the principle of vibration. Nothing rests. Everything moves. Everything vibrates. Energy and emotion are frequencies. The fourth is the principle of polarity. Everything is dual. Opposites are two extremes of the same truth, like hot and cold, light and dark. 5. The principle of rhythm. Everything flows out and in. Life moves in cycles, seasons, and tides. The sixth is the principle of cause and effect. Every cause has its effect, every effect has its cause. Nothing happens by chance. The seventh is the principle of gender. Gender is in everything. The masculine and feminine energies work in harmony in all creation. Now hold those in mind. We'll soon see how each of these mirror one or more of the commandments. The Ten Commandments weren't just rules for morality, they were codes for aligning human consciousness with divine law. When we read, "Thou shalt not kill," it's not just about murder, it's about the principle of vibration. Do not lower the frequency of life, do not disrupt the rhythm of existence by taking from it. When we hear "Thou shalt not covet," it's an echo of polarity. Understanding that desire born of lack pulls you away from your natural wholeness. When it says, "Remember the Sabbath," that's rhythm. Even creation rested. There is a time to act and a time to be still. "Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image." That's mentalism. It's saying, don't reduce infinite consciousness to something finite. Don't box the divine into a form, because the divine is mind itself. Do you see the symmetry now? Each commandment isn't separate from natural law. It's a moralization, a way to help humans live in tune with those cosmic principles. Moses was educated in the courts of Egypt. Acts 7:22 actually says, "And Moses was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians." So, it's not a stretch to imagine that when Moses formulated the commandments, he was translating the essence of Ma'at and Hermetic law into a form his people could follow: ethical, personal, and practical. The Ten Commandments were like a bridge, taking cosmic law and making it into moral law, turning energy principles into ethical behavior. Now let's step east for a moment. The Hermetic mind knew that everything is mental. Consciousness is the root of all. That's not far from the Upanishads of India, which say the universe is Brahman, all is mind. Buddha taught, with our thoughts we make the world. That's mentalism. Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita says that the wise act without attachment, knowing that the cycles of creation and destruction are part of divine rhythm. That's rhythm and cause and effect. So, east or west, Africa or Asia, the same wisdom echoes. Different languages, one truth. You see, Hermeticism was a science of consciousness. It taught how the universe works, but the Ten Commandments were a guide for living. They taught how to walk in alignment with the universe. Hermeticism said, "You are a reflection of the divine mind." The commandment said, "Therefore, live like it." It's like the two hemispheres of one brain: wisdom and morality, knowledge and compassion. Without hermetic understanding, the commandments become rigid laws, and without the commandments, hermetic knowledge becomes cold intellect. Together, they balance the spiritual and the human, the unseen and the seen. Now, let's bring it inward. Every principle and commandment can be read within the psyche. When you honor thy father and thy mother, it's not just about your earthly parents, it's about honoring the masculine and the feminine energies, the duality within. When you do not bear false witness, you're aligning with truth vibration, because line creates distortion and distortion lowers frequency. When you do not steal, you're recognizing that the energy is not to be taken without exchange. A principle that even karma in the East upholds. And when you remember the Sabbath, You're remembering the rhythm of stillness, the necessity of silence for the soul to breathe. So, every outer rule hides an inner law. Every commandment is an encoded Hermetic teaching. Even in modern science, we see reflections of this. Quantum physics tells us reality responds to the observer. That's mentalism. Energy frequencies determine form. That's vibration. The law of polarity exists in magnetic fields, in electricity, in biology. Everything oscillates. That's rhythm. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. That's cause and effect. Gender appears in the dance of particles and forces. That's positive and negative, active and receptive. The ancients weren't primitive. They were describing in spiritual language what science is only now beginning to measure. Let's bring it home to everyday life. Critical thinking isn't about rejecting the mystical. It's about understanding that the mystical was always describing what we call laws of nature. When you live out of alignment, lie, envy, overconsume, harm, you violate natural law. And what happens? Your life loses rhythm. Your energy becomes chaotic. Your mind restless. When you align with truth, love, rhythm, and integrity, what happens? Peace, flow, coherence, and your consciousness vibrates with the divine order again. So, sin in ancient language simply meant to miss the mark. And what's the mark? Alignment, harmony with the universal mind. Let's synthesize everything. The Hermetic Principles teach how the universe functions. The Ten Commandments teach how to function within it. One is the operating system, the other, the user manual. One explains the divine mind, the other teaches the divine heart. Together, they are science and the spirit of creation. When we meditate, when we breathe consciously, when we live mindfully, we are following Hermetic law. When we practice compassion, honesty, and self restraint, we are fulfilling the commandments. Buddha's Noble Eightfold Path mirrors these two: right thought, right speech, right action. These are the commandments in another language. Lao Tzu in the Tao Te Ching said, "The way to do is to be." That's Hermetic wisdom simplified. Alignment with flow. So, how do we live this? By seeing the sacred laws not as external demands, but as internal frequencies. You do not obey them out of fear, you align with them out of awareness. You don't follow them because you have to. You embody them because you understand that they are the architecture of harmony. Whether you call it God, the universe, source, or divine mind, it's the same intelligence asking us to live in tune with itself. So, when next you read the Ten Commandments, don't just see stone tablets. See reflections of Hermetic principles written in moral language. And when you study the Hermetic teachings, don't see ancient magic. See the same divine order the Hebrews translated into daily practice. The mystic and the moralists were never at war. They were partners in helping humanity remember the same truth. The heaven and earth are not separate realms. They are one continuum, governed by mind, expressed through action, held together by rhythm, and sustained by love. When you understand that, you stop living against the current. You flow with divine law. You stop resisting and start resonating. And that is how you turn commandments into consciousness and principles into practice. Thank you for journeying through this with me today on Breaking It Down with David. Remember, truth doesn't divide traditions, it unites them. Because truth, in its highest form, is always one. Until next time, keep thinking deeply, keep living consciously, and let's keep breaking it down. Thank you.